But I don't think he would have to. If he did it with a regular printer, it would still just be a picture of a piece of steak, right? I mean, how does it become a regular
there's different
steak?
ways to understand. Exactly. Well, there's different ways to understand about how things are replicated. For example, we've all seen recently that they have these 3D printers right now, where you could basically, like you said, email your friend the 3D printout of, say, an AK-47. And if you had a 3D printer, you could actually print out a gun. Now, these things, of course, need to be regulated and shouldn't be allowed to happen. But the thing is, when technology explodes in the way it is right now, in this past decade especially, you have things that are happening so quickly that you don't even have time for the regulators to catch up to, such as in the case of these 3D printers printing out AK-47s or other weapons. You know what I mean? So, like, technology is moving so fast that we can't even keep up with it with the laws to make it legitimate technology for the masses. But your question was about the replicators using things, creating things such as a steak. Well, just like the 3D printer has a certain base material that it works with to create the end result, you could have a replicator that just puts in pure nutrition, that just puts in pure steak-like taste, and without even using animals, too. And if it were done right, you'd be eating a much more nutritious steak that was much tastier and didn't kill any animals.
So does this have something to do with replicating the molecules of the substance that you're trying to send? You know how we're all made up of little atoms and things?
Yep.
Those, I guess, theoretically could be duplicated. I mean, we do the little test tube babies and such now, so we do know how to make things synthetically.
Well, that's absolutely right. And you know, if we want to talk about genetic engineering, here again, we're entering a wilderness which is uncharted territory. I mean, what is the end result of genetic engineering? And look, they replicated Dolly the sheep 20-some years ago, and now they're already talking. Well, of course we have the technology to duplicate humans. I mean, what are the spiritual consequences of doing that? I mean, we're making we can make cyber living organisms now, maybe even super soldiers. Maybe there's a military application to this.
I mean, and being able to mix different breeds and species of animals and things together with each other or with humans even. I mean, you could get into a dangerous place in a hurry. And then those creatures, if they start reproducing naturally, I mean, the human race could be destroyed in a few generations. You know, theoretically.
Theoretically, you're right. I mean, these are philosophical and spiritual questions. As uncomfortable as they are to ask, we absolutely need to be having these kind of discussions.
Well,
and technology is moving so rapidly right now.
Yeah.
We need to keep on top of it and understand what the repercussions are.
Well, the fellow who was supposed to, who we thought was coming on the first hour, we were confused, has written a book, and several books actually, and Chris Ward is his name, and he's actually dealing with somewhat he's a minister, and he's had the question posed to him, can transhumans be saved, you know? Say something that's only partly human.
Right.
And he goes under the auspice that, yes, they can be. The Bible says to preach the word, the gospel of Jesus unto every creature. And they just have to accept. They have to be, you know, if they're partly human, then they're going to still have a soul, he believes.
Sure.
I mean, that's a great debate, I suppose, in some circles. Some would say, no, animals don't have souls, and there's people that love their animals like kids, you know. So
Sure.
we don't know 100%. It's generally assumed that animals don't have souls and people do. But what do you do if you got something that's part human and part animal?
There you go.
You would have to assume
There you go.
if it's part human, it has a soul, I would think. So, this is deep. It's like, I miss the good old days sometimes, Brad.
Don't we all?
But I think
there's
that...
no turning back now.
Yeah, what is it? Are these people mad in these labs creating whatever and whenever? It's ridiculous. But I guess we need to look at your Cosmos section too a little bit and kind of figure out what you're thinking there. Has that got to do with when you say cosmos, different planets and things, or what is that?
Well, there is a chapter called Other Planet Structures, and there's quite a few photographs showing structures on the moon, mining operations on the moon, a monolith on the planet of Mars called Phobos. There's also another monolith on Mars. There's the Cydonia region with pyramids and, of course, the face on Mars. There's evidence of bases on Mars. And this is where the teleportation technology has already been in use. There are whistleblowers now who are actually describing their trips to Mars. And they left out of what they called a jump room at no other place than right next to LAX Airport in Los Angeles at the Hughes Aircraft Facility, which was also used by the CIA. And they describe how it's like stepping into an elevator. And then when you get out of that elevator, you're on Mars. So teleportation technology is also starting to trickle out to the mainstream, and scientists are now able to replicate it on a much smaller scale. But you got to understand, everything that's in the black operations has at least a couple decades head start.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was analyzed once that as soon as these technologies went black, and what I mean by black is went ultra top secret, and we're only privy to a select few who would know about it. And then, of course, everything in the government is very compartmentalized, so you can only know what you need to know. That on top of a very rigid hierarchy with a chain of command. So even sometimes the president doesn't even know the big picture here of what some of these technologies can achieve. But it was analyzed back in 1947 when the first crashes were being retrieved. Actually, it started before then, but most researchers will start this time clock around then in the late 1940s. And every single year that these operations have gone black, they have advanced 44 years ahead of the rest of the population. So where that puts us today is the technology in the black operations are now several hundred years ahead of what we have today.
Wow. That's a lot of catching up. And you know, the Bible even says in the end times, though, knowledge will be imparted very rapidly and increased. You know, knowledge is compounding. I've even heard statistics on it.
Oh, yeah.
How much faster it used to take X many years to double the amount of things we knew. And then it was this many years and this many. You know, you've heard those statistics, I'm sure. To the point that it's mind-boggling now how quickly it turns over. It's like you can get on the internet and Google something, you know, a disease or anything else, and get a lot of information right there. So you can Google any subject. And so there are some good uses for that knowledge. But
that's right. And I would like to point out that I'm an executive director of a nonprofit organization called World Peace Through Technology. And our mission statement is to examine the benevolent uses of technology. And we make a very clear distinction that there is technology that could do great harm, such as nuclear warfare or germ warfare. And then there's technology like the internet which has enabled your show to get out to listeners, computers, and other things. And people need to realize that technology is just technology. It's what humans do to it and what their intention is that make it either good or bad. You know, for example, a hammer could help build someone's house and give them shelter, or it could be used as a weapon and kill someone. It's the intention that's used with that technology that really distinguishes what it's good and what it's used for. So part of our philosophy, the World Peace Through Technology, is we like to explore the benevolent technology. What is technology that's going to bring us together? What's technology that can actually help the human race and make people happy? And we have an event coming up in 2.5 weeks called the How Weird Street Fair here in San Francisco, which is put on by the World Peace Through Technology organization. And in that regard, we have DJs come out and they set up their sound systems, which is technology, and people dance and people are happy and people make connections. So this is how we look at it on a day-to-day basis, that there are things that people can do to bring together communities and bring together people in a festival-like situation, in our case, that could be considered benevolent technology.
Will they be doing like techno dancing and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's right. You should come out.
Oh, man. And, wow. Yeah, all the way to Cali.
It'll be on April 28th, so 2 weeks from Sunday, and the website is howweird.org.
LV. Well, what other kind of things will be there? It's mostly just technology, and I suppose there'll be like an iPhone conference, and where they talk about that new iPhone that's coming out or something, or is that not quite on the agenda? Or?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because we want to bring in a technology pavilion, but we will need some big technology sponsors to make that happen. Right now, our sponsors are like Dos Equis Beer and a tea company, and used to be Zipcar, things like that. We would love to have a big technology pavilion, and we have a great spot available for it. But in this case, it's just going to be a big fair, and the theme this year is Weirdy Gras. So we're doing like a Mardi Gras playoff of Carnival, and we've got live marching bands that are going to walk through the fair and create a little Mardi Gras atmosphere, and people dress up, and we have beads at the front gate when people make a $10 donation. So, it's real festive and real fun, and we'll post videos and photos the day after.
Wow. Looking back at this teleportation thing that you were talking about, Brad, can you explain how teleportation works? Because I would think it would be very easy to scramble up all the atoms and all the things and not get them put back right, especially when you're talking about, and how does it get from Earth to Mars? You know, that's an awful long distance to go. Is it in like a tube and it's put on the next spaceship going up, or is it, how's it done? I don't get it.
Not at all. Okay, well, my understanding is teleportation only works on small items, and it's best if it's organic. And, of course, we know that we're all made up of atoms and molecules, and if you break it down, you can make a simulation of those atoms and molecules. So basically what the transporters do is they will take a complete picture, and it's very similar to the way it's depicted in Star Trek, where the person just gets sort of a complete body scan of every single atom and molecule in the body, and basically it is reproduced in a different location. And the person will just fade out like they do in Star Trek and then reappear at the location where this information is being sent. A good example for your listeners to understand this is like a fax machine. What is a fax? You know, you're putting a piece of paper in one end and it's coming out exactly the same on the other end. But that piece of paper doesn't travel, just the data bits travel. So if you can look at it in a much bigger...
I see. That's good.
much more comprehensive way of sending information, and that's all a transponder is. It's just a way of sending information to another location, just like a fax machine.
Okay. Now, also, I wanted to touch one more thing about the aliens and the full disclosure we started out the show with. You know, I've had a lot of guests on that, and I personally lean this way too, that feel that aliens are really maybe fallen angels, demonic beings, you know, offspring of fallen angels. You know, maybe they talk about the Nephilim in Genesis 6, you know, the offspring of angels and women, and maybe I just do you feel like that there is a connection between these people or quasi people, you know, giants and different things mentioned in the Bible, and what you're hearing about in the alien world, in that circle? Do you think there could be a connection from your point of view?
Well, let's put it this way. Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. Glad you brought it up. This is extensively explained and explored in the Cosmos section. There's a whole chapter on EBEs, which is the government term for aliens, extraterrestrial biological entities. And these are beings that are not human, although some of them look very much like humans. So similar that you might not even be able to tell one on the street. And then, of course, others are drastically different in appearance. You know, you've got your gray aliens, which are only about 3 feet tall, and these great big bubble heads with wraparound dark eyes. And you've also got the Draco reptilian race. Now, I'm glad you brought that up about the fallen angels, because I have a theory, and I break this down in the conclusion of Future Esoteric, and that is all of this talk about Satan and demons living underground is very much the same thing as the Greys and the Draco reptilians living underground. And maybe Satan and Lucifer is the same thing as the Draco reptilians. I'm just putting it out there. They've been around for a long time, and they share very many same characteristics. Right.
I agree. In fact, the fellow I was telling you about, Chris Ward, who wrote who mentioned the about how transhuman people could still be saved under the plan of salvation because they're partly human. He has a new book coming out called Satan and Lucifer Decoded, and I'm thinking that's not the book I brought out tonight anyway, but I have that book here. I was studying his work earlier tonight, and I think I was reading the wrong book, but that's okay. He didn't make, and my wife was confused as to who was coming on the first hour. So, but all is well. But it's interesting that you mentioned Satan and Lucifer as though they're two separate entities, because that's part of the thing that he points out in his book. Do you feel that perhaps Lucifer is like the son of Satan or something to that agenda? Do you hear that type of talk in your circle of influence there?
I don't hear many people putting these two together, and I think that's why I'm glad to be on your show and speak to a Christian audience and put it out there to your listeners to see if this theory makes sense. This is really kind of a pet theory of my own, is that, Satan, Lucifer, are Draco reptilian ETs.
Yeah.
They live for a long time. They can live several hundred years. They're very telepathic, and they also have the ability to shapeshift, which is mean to change the way they look. And again, we're talking about molecular change. So this could be something to do with technology. It could be something with maybe a magic spell. However, we're going to break that down and try to quantify it scientifically. But they also have the ability to shadow people, and these are called the Archons. And the Archons are also these entities that can float in the air that are just out of our perception. Now, if you had a camera that could photograph infrared, you could start taking pictures of these Archons, including these Draco reptilians, and there are photographs of them. when they're in a fourth dimensional state. And it's sort of like, as our ascended masters would call, when people go astral traveling. They leave their body, but their conscience is transcending and out of their body. Now, if you're malicious with this kind of intent, and if you're really good at it, then you could get inside the head of world leaders. And we were talking earlier about the hierarchy and the chain of command. Well, that's pretty much true on this planet Earth. Every institution is a hierarchy. So if you wanted to control humans, it's actually quite easy. You just go right to the top. You go right to the president. You go right to the Pope. You go right to the CEOs of the most important corporations. You control those 300 or so most influential and important people on the planet, and there you go. The rest of the human race is going to follow right along.
Well, I think we're going to see something to that effect in the end times, according to the Bible, with the Antichrist coming to power. He's going to have his false prophet. He's going to have the beast with him, and they're going to, and I'm sure, like you said, the 300 most influential people and the big business operators are going to be in that fold, and so they are possibly going to be mind control. Is that what you're getting to? It's going to be maybe some mind control going on behalf of the devil to get them to do what needs to be done for him to come to his reign of power.
Well, exactly. And let's say we were able to use benevolent technology, as we were speaking of earlier, such as an infrared camera, and go and photograph every single politician and leader who's in this club of 300, say, and see if they are being followed around. See if they are chipped. You know, this is the age of humans being chipped. The RFID chips are meant to roll out right around now, Brian. And this is really scary, and I think you can look at it in the context of the mark of the beast. Yeah. They want to put biochips in every one of us. And when you're chipped, you're controlled. And they can make you do things, or they can torture you, or they can even kill you. So, me personally, I'll never accept one of these, no matter how much sugar coating they put on top of it. These are dangerous devices, and they're meant to control us.
Exactly. I mean, it's like the ultimate form of slavery. And it's like all these movies, you know, where the little people are living under the ground in the subways and different things. You've seen all these kind of movies, and they got to fight the bad guys. And even recently there was a movie, I didn't see it, I just saw the commercials, where the guys are fighting these things. You mentioned shape-shifting earlier, and the thing they're fighting, you can't hardly even see it. It's just like it comes in and then it's gone. You know what I mean? It's almost like
absolutely,
almost invisible, but they can tell it's there, and they maybe have their way of seeing it. It maybe isn't totally invisible, you know. But it's like
exactly.
And then you mentioned super soldiers, and a lot of these things are really possibilities, I'm afraid, just based on what they're doing and these mad scientists. Wow. Once again, I miss the 70s now, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You turn all mad scientists into loving scientists. Then maybe we wouldn't have a conflict of interest. And I really want to promote this discussion, excuse me, about benevolent technology, because that's what it's all about. It's not that people should be afraid of this technology. It's people should be afraid of the intention that people like mad scientists use it for. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think
it's all a matter of how we're going to use this, because let's face it, there's no turning back. We can't go back to the 70s, Brian, as much as we both like to. You know, before chemtrails and a lot of other things that have happened in this world. We are here. It is now. We're living in this exponential growth phase of technology, but we absolutely need to have an essential discussion about what is benevolent technology, that it can help the human race and be like a tool for us, and what's going to hurt us.
Okay, so you're saying how to use this technology correctly, but as you just mentioned, the bad guys, they already got an agenda. There's things in order In fact, the Bible wrote about it thousands of years ago, some of the things that are going to be coming to pass. And we're beginning to be able to really understand how this could be. You know, when it says that he calls us all, small and great, rich and poor, bond and free, to take a mark, and without it they cannot buy or sell anything. You're starting to be able to see how that could happen. You mentioned the RFID chips. Now, you called it a biochip. Explain that term to me, Brad. Biochip. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's the next step of RFID. RFID stands for radio frequency identification. So it's basically they're already putting them in hospital patients. They're already putting them in sex offenders. And it's basically the next step after the bracelets that ex-felons come out of prison and they put these bracelets on them. Well, those are bulky and they can get cut off. But well, let's start with RFID. RFID chips, once they're implanted, are virtually impossible to get out on your own. You'd need to go to a specialist to be able to remove them. Well, the next step are the biochips. And biochips are basically what the gray aliens put in implants of people who are abducted. And now, there's a big difference between abducted and contactee, because contactee is speaking with benevolent ETs who have no intention of harming us, who only want to help. And this is where we need to distinguish between the two kinds of ETs. There are those that are in service to self and those in service to others. The ones that are in service to others are acting through the contactees and usually giving very important information to that person and to the human race, and are here to help, but are here merely as advisors or just observers. Now, you have other ETs, such as the Greys and the Draco-Reptilians, who are very much in service to self and very much have a covert agenda to enslave the human race. And as we were saying earlier, they have a way to get into the heads of people through these archons, through their telepathic fourth-dimensional capabilities. They can make people think and do actions the way they want. Now, step it up one step further, you put a biochip in them, like the Greys do to the abductees, and then you've got...
That's how they're able to read their thoughts, right? I've heard that.
That's how they're able to read their thoughts, and even after abductees have been habitually abused, once they're chipped, they'll get a command, okay, go out to that field in your back of your house, and then go voluntarily go and meet the ship, be abducted again, in the case of women, having their eggs extracted, being impregnated for a short while, and then having the fetus extracted, and then they're using these mixes, these hybrids of human ETs, and what they're doing this for, I'm not entirely sure, but it's probably along the lines of a super soldier, or according to the Greys, the reason they're doing it is to keep their race alive, that they are a test tube race of biosynthetic entities, and maybe they are soulless. I don't know, but they sure don't.
They could be raising another group of giants, Nephilim, you know, and there some that are saying that giants are going to come back. I don't know. I don't like the sound of that. I don't like the sound of aliens coming down here either. But it's ironic that you mentioned the whole the bracelet thing. And with the prisoners being on house arrest with the bracelets, it was just on the news this morning. I just happened to turn it on to check the weather. And they are actually in the process of doing away with house arrest and bracelets temporarily because there's been a couple of violent crimes, I guess, with people that were supposed to be incarcerated or with these bracelets, and they're seeing that they're still able to do crimes, so they're kind of trying to come up with a new solution, if you will, Brad. And I could only imagine that it could be some kind of RFID chip or a biochip where they can control that person. You know, and if that person breaks the threshold of that door, they get into immense pain.
Yeah, exactly. They're already putting RFID chips into sex offenders, and it won't be long before ex-felons get them mandatory. But the way they're going to sell it to the rest of us who don't break the law and who are law-abiding citizens, they're going to sugarcoat it by saying, oh, well, you're going to want one of these chips because, think about it, you'll never lose your wallet, you'll never lose your keys, and more importantly, it'll interface with your smartphone, so if you're ever having a heart attack or something, or some kind of health issue, it's going to notify you. And you think, wow, well, those are good kind of things to have, and here's technology being my friend. But like I said, once these chips are in you, they're very, very difficult to get out. And so it's like no turning back. If you do it, you're putting your trust into this system that's going to have the ability to, one, monitor your every move. I mean, that's given. Also, to possibly be able to do more nefarious things to you, such as maybe even mind control.
Maybe even DNA alteration, if they were able to load that chip with the DNA of another being or something to that effect. You see, it could actually, theoretically, if they put the DNA of, say, the devil into the people who are taking the chip, you know, couldn't that DNA mix with the human's DNA to where it could not be unmixed? And then you would be a damnable type being, I would think, because the Bible kind of references that the people that take the chip can't be saved. That's kind of where they draw the line, I guess. So it's very spooky. How do we know if this is the mark of the beast or if this is just something else or leading up to it, you know? How do we know, I guess, when we're drawing that line or crossing that line? I don't know. I guess, like you said, we better just avoid it altogether.
I would say avoid it until you absolutely know for sure that you can trust your government, that all the questions in history have been resolved. And I know we're kind of running out of time, and I'd like to come back on your show because we can talk about time travel and the implications of that. And the main implication, and I'll just give a little teaser for a future interview, is you could look back on every single event in history. There will be no more conspiracies. You could be able to freeze frame exactly where every bullet came from when Kennedy got shot. You'll be able to see who was really responsible for, say, the Titanic sinking, and it wasn't an iceberg, it was an explosion, and it was to create the Federal Reserve. So the main thing they want to do is keep us from knowing. Keep us from knowing our real past history because it is so inflammatory to the powers that be. We'll find out they're all criminals. We'll know who they are. If they're still alive, they know they can't run and hide anymore. We got them.
Yeah.
But they can't let this out. Our true history must remain shrouded. But with this high technology, we can look at it and do these kind of things. Could you imagine if every single person had an app that would allow them to do this? Talk about a killer app that you could look back on any historical event you want.
90 seconds.
Of Christ, which was demonstrated to the generals at Holloman Air Force Base in 1964 with this technology called Looking Glass. And they presented the generals in their... Every decade, they would do a technology exchange, and in '64, they were giving the generals what was called the Yellow Cube or the Yellow Book. It's also called the Bible, and it interfaces with the human mind. So you could say, take me to this
60
location.
seconds.
And so the generals uniformly agreed. They were all Christian and very devout. They said, well, we would like to see the Passion of Christ, the whole Passion play, the whole way it worked out. Sure enough, he was very much a real man, very much crucified, very much a torturous, horrific occasion, but it was duplicated in a holographic form. It was duplicated in such a way, it was like, remember in the first Star Wars movie when they're playing three-dimensional chess with a hologram?
Yeah.
That's what this device can do. That's what this device called the Yellow Book can do, and I describe it in quite detail in my book, Future Esoteric, and it is the killer app. If this technology were out there,
10 seconds.
No more conspiracies. True history is known by everyone.
Wow, that would be a game changer. You're absolutely right. Wow, folks, go to bradolson.com if you want to get any of his works, and it's Olson with an E. And wow, this is a lot of stuff to think about, Brad. You know, of course, it always is on this show. There's so much that I haven't really delved into in the whole world of even the Bible itself is so big and so beautiful. It's hard to even, if I just only looked at the Bible and didn't think about any of these other things, wow, I would spend the rest of my life trying to learn that book, I think so. But we thank you for coming on. This was very nice. So.
Yeah, and I would just like to say my website is CCC Publishing, where they can view the entire contents of all my books through apps that we have on there through Google Books, where you can browse the Future Esoteric book for free at cccpublishing.com, and howweird.org and peacetour.org are the nonprofit organizations I spoke of earlier.
All right. Well, good deal. All right, Brad. Well, thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Brian. Great talking to you again.
Yes, you too. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Weekend.
Yes. Oh, yes, you as well.
Live Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Revelations per minute. And you can also call into the show at 661-449-9924 to speak to Mr. Brian Wilson, the radio preacher man. We are facing the end of days as written in the Bible, and it is obvious that America is under judgment. It is imperative, especially now, that we develop a close relationship with our Creator, Jesus Christ. In these end days, it is vital to hear the Word of God and to be a doer of the Word. Do you need help with this? Well, then the Radio Preacher Man is the man with God's plan. The Radio Preacher Man focuses on the Word of God and how to apply God's principles and commandments into our daily lives. The Radio Preacher Man will do his best to help you prepare for eternity. Medic experts and watchmen often join RPM, and they share information on subjects that churches are not discussing, such as the earth changes, Nephilim, the rise of the beast, and the Antichrist. All of these things are happening right in front of your faces, and RPM explores these hot topics. RPM focuses on all of God's awesome promises, power, prayer, and prophecy. It is urgent to get prepared, be prepared, and help others prepare for His second coming. If you need God's revelation in your life, and we all do, listen to the Radio Preacher Man on his show, Revelations per Minute, from 6 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. If you want to talk to RPM or the guest, call 661-449-9924. The lines are always open in Jesus' name. You can also get in touch with RPM at www.radiopreacherman.tk. And also, you can visit CUBN, Christians United Broadcasting Network, www.cubn.tk. Thank you and have a blessed day with the Radio Preacher Man.
When distress